Hey guys, this is Ron. So I wanted to do a couple of videos about the Python programming language. Now, I know what you're saying. There's lots of Python out there, lots of videos, lots of tutorials, there's documentation, you name it, it's out there. So really all I've got for you is I enjoy writing Python. I don't do it for a living, but I find in my capacity as a network administrator or whatever new piece of my job that I'm working on, Python just comes in handy. So for instance, recently I found myself on someone else's network and there were a bunch of devices that I had to be able to remotely tell if one of those devices configuration changed over a period of time. So rather than log into each one and check its configuration line by line, I wrote some Python. So my Python script would reach out, it would SSH into each device, grab a copy of the configuration and run a hash on it. And I would keep track of those hashes. And so if the hash changed, well then I know something in the configuration changed. So it was a good way for me to not have to log into each devices, but I kept track of their configurations. I kept track of when changes were made because I kept pulling them on a periodic basis. And then I took that information, threw it into a database to track over time. So again, I don't get paid to program, but it makes my life easier. And so I kind of want to spread some of that your way. Like I said, there's lots of other tutorials out there, and I'll point a couple of them out here in a second. But again, Python can make your life easier, plus you can have a lot of fun with it. So this is the python.org website. This is kind of where, if you're brand new to Python, you should probably start. And one thing worth noting is there are two versions of Python down here. You see there's a 3.5 and a 2.7. So at one point in time there was a divergence, or whatever you want to call it. Some people wanted to add some new features. They wanted Python to deal with things slightly different than they had in the past, but they also didn't want to break full-on compatibility for people that had written programs in it. So 2.7 is still in development. From what I can tell and from my experience, there's a lot of people that still program in 2.7. I still program in 2.7. Now 3.5's got some new features here and there, and if you're not used to them, if you're coming from the 2.7 world, 3.5 can trip you up from time to time. So specifically, I converted one of my programs recently from 2.7 to 3.5, and I thought it was going to be, a real easy jump, and as it turns out, it was a little bit more of a, jump than I thought it was going to be. There was a lot of lines that I had to change here and there. Now, the overwhelming majority of my lines of code worked just fine, but to get the whole program to work, I had to chew on it for a bit. I had to go back and import different modules. I had to add a lot of encoding and decoding. So suffice it to say, it was not as easy of a transition as I thought it would be. So again, I typically program in 2.7, and during this tutorial, we'll also be writing in 2.7. Again, just because that's what I'm used to. So I encourage you, if you're running Linux, you're like I am, you're already going to have Linux, or you're already going to have Python installed on your system. If you're running Mac, you should as well have it installed on your system. You'll just have to look to make sure that, again, your version is 2.7 and not 3.5. If it is, then some of the samples that you'll see along the way, or some of the projects that we work on, might not be 100% compatible, but you should be able to muddle your way through it, do a little bit of Googling, and you'll be just fine. Now, if you're in the Windows world, you're going to have to download Python. It doesn't come native to Windows, and so just go ahead and download one of these installers, depending upon if you're running 64-bit or 32-bit, and the install process is just like any other Windows program. I would say though, take the extra step, Google it. You'll want to add Python to your path, and it just makes it easier for calling Python from the command line is all. So if we go back up to the top, you'll see docs. Under docs, you'll be able to do the drop down here and go to 2.7. There's a tutorial, and there's lots of documentation here as far as what different modules do, what different functions do, you name it. It's probably in here, and I find myself visiting this site quite a bit as I'm writing some of my programs. Now there are other sites again that have tutorials, and I do recommend you go and check them out. There's Code Academy here, so when I first started out in Python, I think I went through Code Academy just to kind of get a feel for how Python differed from some of the other languages. Python is an interpreted language, meaning that you'll basically be writing text files, and then Python will interpret what's in those text files. Some of the other languages, you basically write a program, you compile it into some kind of executable, and then that executable can kind of stand on its own, run. Whereas with Python, again, Python will be used to interpret whatever code that you use. Now there are ways to compile some of your code in Python, but we won't really run into that. Again, we'll just be working with .py files. But if you see a .pyc, those are typically some of your compiled Python. You may see it from time to time when you import your module that you've written into another module, and then it kind of gets compiled in the background. Either way, we'll be safe with writing in text files and just interpreting those with Python. So Code Academy's got a couple of different projects and lessons that you can do here, and so again, for some more experience, more exposure, go ahead and give it a try. There's another site here that is the Python tutorial. I have not walked through this. I have clicked through a couple of these when I'm looking for something specific, and I don't feel like necessarily digging through the Python docs. So just get an alternate viewpoint of how things are coded. Now, once you start getting a little bit of experience under your belt, you might want to try it out. Push yourself. Try to see what you can do with your code, right? So there's all kinds of different things. So Coding Game, I played for a bit, and I think it was a lot of fun. In that, so Coding Game gives you a scenario. They do all the graphics and this and that, and you're basically gonna write the brains behind making their programs work, right? So you can program in multiple different types of languages, but for me, I programmed in Python, but I think you can do C, you can do Java, you name it. They accept quite a bit. Now, again, you're just programming the brains of the operation, and then they take what you have and graphically kind of represent it into some type of game, and so you're trying to get a character to do certain things and win. So it's challenging, but it's a lot of fun as well. The Python challenge, I did a couple levels of this. It was kind of fun. It's like an Easter egg hunt, or whatever kind of puzzle, kind of solver. You're basically going to move from page to page, and the intent is whatever's on the page, whatever the challenge is, you're trying to use Python to solve that. So it's very unique in how they kind of do things, and it's a lot of fun. Can be frustrating at times, but again, it's all about gaining some experience, really using your brain to figure out new ways of laying some code. There is a free code camp. A buddy of mine recommended this. I have yet to kind of jump on it. It looked more web-based to me. I think there was a lot of cascading style sheets, a lot of this, a lot of that. But I think the intent is to work through all these different scenarios, different tutorials, gain some experience, some knowledge that way, and then take those skills and start applying them to help out some nonprofits and this and that. And I think the real takeaway here is that you're coding on real projects that are community based. So one, you get the experience of working with other coders, and then two, you have something to put on your resume, right? You're not just the guy who sits around the house and learn a little bit of code. No, you've applied it and worked on real projects. So again, I haven't spent time doing that because I have enough projects on my own. Again, I'm not looking to get paid for it, but if that's something you're interested in, you can check it out. Lastly, I do want to point out Stack Overflow. So as you start learning and as you start coding different projects, inevitably you're going to run into problems. You're going to run into something where you can't quite figure out. Maybe it's the syntax, maybe it's just how do I approach this problem from a logical level. Well, Stack Overflow is a great kind of questions and answer forum. There's tons of coders on here that just I think they just enjoy solving problems, right? So you can post questions, and I've used it in the past, and I've met some great people on here where again, they just enjoy solving problems. Now I will say, take everything you see with a grain of salt. Not everyone's code on here is good code. Not everyone's code on here is secure code. Again, you got people from every walk of life on here, and you don't know what their intentions are with the code that they post to Stack Overflow. But for the most part, I found it to be a very useful resource. Again, you just need to make sure that if you're going to copy something off of there, you know what every line of code does. It should just be pointing you in the right direction to kind of, sort something out with your code. But I'd be weary of just grabbing some code off of there, slapping it in your program, and moving on to the next thing. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I just wanted to, kind of point out that we're going to dig into Python, Python 2.7. As you go through my tutorial, I advise that you also check out these other tutorials and these other resources because it just makes you a better all-around programmer. So I'm excited to get into the code, so let's get going.